Have you noticed that the moment you begin to change, the people around you almost immediately push back? They won't admit it directly. Instead, they tease you for being different. They warn you you're being reckless. They give you that uneasy silence when you refuse to play along. But underneath all of that, the truth is simple. Your growth threatens their control. Because if you rise, they can't lean on you the same way. If you start saying no, they can't use your yes. If you stop chasing approval, their approval loses value. And no one likes to face that. Your refusal exposes how much of their own life is still built on dependency, distraction, and blind pursuit. What no one ever told you, and what Schopenhauer saw clearly, is that people resist you not because you are wrong, but because your resistance to the game reveals their slavery to it. This is the price of a mind that cannot be bribed. It unsettles people. It shows them the cracks in their own foundation. Schopenhauer knew this. When you detach from the endless treadmill of desire and approval, you become dangerous, not loud, not aggressive, just untouchable. And that untouchability feels like an accusation to those still trapped. This path isn't for those who want comfort. It's not for those who want applause. It's for you, the one exhausted by being pulled like a puppet, the one who feels the quiet anger of others pressing in. As you step away, the one ready to reclaim what no one else can touch, your mind. A mind they cannot seduce, a mind they cannot control, a mind that terrifies because it no longer bends. If you feel that resistance now, don't mistake it for failure. It's proof that you're breaking orbit, proof that you are beginning to build what Schopenhauer promised, freedom from manipulation. Schopenhauer looked at life without filters, without excuses, and what he saw was uncomfortable. He saw that human existence does not rest on peace. It rests on craving, the endless pool of desire, one after another, like waves that never stop breaking. And when you look closely, you know he was right. Think about the last time you finally got what you wanted. Maybe it was the job you chased, the recognition you craved, or the person you thought would complete you. For a short while, it felt like everything clicked. The world was lighter, the hunger was gone. But how long did it last? A week? A month? Before long, the glow faded, the satisfaction dissolved, and something inside you reached again for more. Another goal, another prize, another illusion. This is what Schopenhauer called the pendulum of existence, the restless swing between pain and boredom. On one side, the sting of wanting what you do not yet have, and the other, the dull emptiness that settles in once the desire is met. You already know this rhythm, the ache of being denied, the anticlimax of finally achieving. It is not an exception, it is the rule. And yet the world hides this truth behind a lie. It whispers, happiness is just one step away. Work harder, impress them, collect more. When you arrive, you will finally be free. That is how society keeps you obedient. That is how systems, corporations, even relationships manipulate you. They dangle the promise of fulfillment just out of reach, knowing you will spend your life running after it. But here lies the power in Schopenhauer's vision. The moment you stop believing the lie, the leash snaps. When you see that no achievement, no possession, no applause can give you permanent peace, you stop playing their game, you step off the treadmill, you stop orbiting illusions, and in that stillness, something shifts. Because what can they offer you if you are no longer seduced by promises? What can they threaten you with if your worth no longer depends on their approval? Suddenly you are not a customer to be sold to, not a pawn to be guilted, not a follower to be manipulated. You become untouchable, and this untouchability terrifies them. While they cling to the next promotion, the next compliment, the next escape, you refuse. You stand still. You are not bargaining for illusions. You are no longer begging life to deliver what it cannot give. And that refusal is more powerful than any shout. But Schopenhauer did not stop at desire. He went deeper, into the very engine behind it all. He called it the will, and it was not gentle. It was not rational. It was blind, irrational, relentless. The will is that endless hunger that keeps pushing you forward, even when you are exhausted, even when you have already consumed what you thought you needed. You think you want love. You find it. The hunger shifts. You think you want success. You climb the mountain, and immediately a higher peak appears. The will never rests. It feeds, and feeds, and feeds again. You call it ambition, but is it really yours? Have you felt it, that hollow moment after achievement, when instead of peace, you are struck by emptiness, that restless silence when the applause dies down, and you realize your mind is already chasing the next thing? That is not failure. That is the trap. This is not your weakness. This is the structure of existence itself. Most people cannot bear to face it, so they don't. They decorate their cages with distractions, endless noise, endless scrolling, endless busyness, anything to avoid hearing the gnawing engine inside. But if you dare to face it, if you sit in that silence long enough, you start to see differently. Schopenhauer warned us, man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. Let that sink in. You may control your actions, but the craving that drives them, you did not choose that. The will moves you like a storm. And here is the breaking point. Will you keep chasing every wave it sends, or will you stop? Because this is where real strength begins. Not in motion, but in stillness. Not in running after the winds, but in planting your feet. Not in begging the storm to pass, but in realizing you are heavier than the wind. That is when it changes. The less you need from the world, the more untouchable you become. You are no longer a puppet, not of praise, not of pleasure, not of promises. You have stopped dancing for rewards that vanish the moment they are given. And that is what terrifies people. Not your power, your refusal to be bought. Picture it. Everyone else still chasing, still clinging, still running after the storm, while you stand still, calm, present, immovable. And in that moment, you are no longer part of the storm. You become the ground it breaks against. The further you step into independence, the more resistance you meet. At first it is soft, a mocking smile, a gentle warning, advice disguised as concern. But over time it hardens into distance. Because your refusal to be controlled reveals how deeply others still are. And nothing unsettles the herd more than someone who slips the leash. Most people say they want freedom, but what they really want is comfort, approved by others. Schopenhauer understood this. He knew solitude was not a retreat from life. It was the only way to see it clearly. As long as you are absorbed in the noise of others, their demands, their opinions, their expectations, you are not yourself. You are a mirror. You reflect what they need you to be. Step away, and everything shifts. In the silence, the borrowed voices fall quiet. In solitude, something rare happens. You finally hear your own. That is why so many fear being alone. Because solitude removes their favorite drug, approval. No nods of agreement, no borrowed identity, just silence heavy and unbroken. And that silence is a mirror, one most people run from. Because here is the uncomfortable question. Do you really believe what you think? Or did someone else believe it first, and you just memorized the script? And here is the paradox. The more you accept solitude, the less anyone can manipulate you. You no longer beg for belonging. You do not need to be chosen, and that makes you impossible to move. When you stop fearing rejection, no one can exile you. When you stop chasing applause, no one can silence you. This is why solitude is not weakness. It is not withdrawal. It is refinement. It is the forge, where comfort, where illusion burns, where what is left finally belongs to you. Most will never choose this path. They will trade truth for connection. They will run back to the comfort of chains and call it love. But for the few who stay, for those who withstand the silence long enough, something extraordinary. The mind no longer bends. It does not ask to be accepted. It does not shrink to be safe. It stands, alone, heavy, immovable. They will not try to break your mind with force. That is not how manipulation works anymore. They will use something subtler, guilt delivered with concern, shame dressed as maturity, emotional withdrawal masked as boundaries. They will not raise their voice. They will lower it. They will tell you they are just worried about you, that you are not who you used to be. And they will say it just loud enough to make you wonder if they are right. But you are not who you used to be. That is the point. The moment you stop living for approval, the people who were comfortable with your obedience begin to retreat, not because you harmed them, but because your refusal to bend reflects their constant bending. It is not your change that bothers them. It is what your change reveals about them. And so they reframe you, not curious but difficult, not clear but cold, not independent but dangerous. This is the test, because you will feel it all. The sting of rejection, the ache of silence, the subtle pressure to soften so you can be loved again. And you will be tempted to give in, just a little, to nod when you mean no, to smile when something cuts deep, to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Don't. Because this is the moment the mind is either reclaimed or reabsorbed. The moment you either shrink back into the old version of yourself, the manageable one, or you continue walking forward into the fire of your own clarity. Most never make it past this point. They return just enough to be accepted again. They shrink just enough to be tolerated, but they carry the quiet grief of betrayal. You will feel that pressure too, but something in you will not allow it. Not anymore, because you have seen too much. And more importantly, you have remembered who you are without the edits. And when guilt no longer works, envy steps in. Not with confrontation, but with restraint. You will notice the tone change before the words. Compliments that sound like corrections, jokes that sting too sharply, guys that do not meet yours the way they used to. You did not insult anyone. You did not boast. You just stopped apologizing for growing. And in a world addicted to conformity, that alone is enough to be seen as a threat. Your stability becomes unsettling. Your calm, a challenge. Because people do not fear aggression, they fear presence. The kind of presence that is not desperate for recognition. The kind of mind that no longer responds to bait. That is when the world changes its strategy again. If they cannot guilt you and they cannot shake you, they erase you. The invitations stop. The calls disappear. You are written out of stories you helped build, not because you lost value, but because you stopped trading it. They will not call it exclusion. They will call it distance, balance. They will say you drifted. But the truth is simpler. You became harder to control in systems built on silent agreement that makes you expendable. But here is what no one tells you. This silence was distance, this erasure. It is not the end. It is the beginning. Because what is really happening is not exile. It is emergence. You are stepping outside the web of unspoken rules. You are no longer negotiable. No longer defined by how easy you are to manage. And that shift does not make you isolated, it makes you sovereign. You begin to hear yourself again, not the performance, not the mask, the real voice beneath all the noise. And in that moment, you stop needing to be seen. You stop asking to be chosen. You stop chasing belonging from places that required your absence to stay comfortable. This is what it means to build a mind they cannot manipulate. Not a mind that is perfect, not a mind that never feels doubt, but a mind that sees clearly and still stays standing. A mind that knows how much it costs to stop living in reaction and refuses to go back. A mind that no longer folds itself to fit fragile expectations. This is the kind of mind that changes rooms without raising its voice, that makes people nervous not because it demands power, but because it cannot be bribed, flattered, or owned. This is the kind of mind that carries weight, even in silence. And if you keep going, if you survive the whispers, the distance, the pressure to return, something rare begins to take root. You realize your presence no longer asks for permission. You no longer walk to be seen. You walk because it is your path, because it is time. And that walk alone, that quiet, immovable presence, is what shakes the ground beneath those who still crawl. So now the question is yours. Will you slow down just enough to be accepted again? Or will you keep walking,